Hello, my name is Rain and welcome to my channel where I discuss Fantasy Formula 1. It is pretty late in the day, FP1, FP2 has happened, so I'm trying to get my final thoughts out as quickly as possible. I've had a long day at work, so I just got home. It's like 8:30 p.m. and I said that I was going to get this video out by 9. We'll see if I can manage to do that. But because of that, there won't be that much editing. I'm just going to record in one batch and just post it so that I can get it up on the channel. Do not miss tomorrow, 2 hours before the deadline. I will be live here for the deadline stream, as always, where we will be discussing what happens at FP3 and what my final decisions end up being. A few things happened today that we really have to discuss, and one of the main talking points that I'm going to discuss in this sort of discussion is, should we go for budget or should we go for points? Because I feel like there's a lot of bad budget assets that look good for points this week. So we'll get into that, and one of them being Oliver Bearman. Now, Oliver Bearman has been handed a 10-place grid penalty in Monaco after a red flag violation in practice. This pretty much guarantees that he's going to start from the back unless he somehow makes it to Q3. That Haas hasn't been that good in qualifying this year, and Oliver Bearman hasn't had a great time in qualifying either, so I would be surprised if he doesn't start last. Obviously, someone could end up starting from the pit lane and be behind him, but I would imagine that Bearman ends up being lost on the grid. Why is this good? Well, in Monaco this year, there is a mandatory 2 pit stop rule, and I do suspect that we will see someone take the bet, or take the gamble rather, pitting on the first lap to try and just run in clean air early and basically like super undercut people and hope that there aren't, red flags and the like, which, there has been some so far. And the thing is with this sort of strategy is that it only really works if you're like actually one of the last cars on the grid. So I wouldn't be surprised if anyone tries it. It might be Haas. Haas also has had pretty decent race pace so far this season. So maybe they can nurse those tires and go like, start on softs, and if he doesn't get a good start, pit on the first lap and go hard. Something like that. Trying to just undercut people, or at least run in clean air for a while at the start of the race. So for that reason, if that strategy works out, we'll see. Bearman could be a good option for points and positions gained, even in on a track like Monaco. But obviously, Bearman looks terrible for budget gains. Looking at the budget builder, Bearman is one of the worst assets currently after obviously the -4 points that he got in round 6 and only a 4-pointer to make up for that in round 7. He needs a 22-pointer to increase in price, 30 points to increase 0.6 million. If he scores less than 15 points, he decreases by 0.6 million. So we really need Bearman to score really big to increase in price, and I just don't think it's going to happen. But if he does something weird strategy-wise and it works out and he gets like a 10-pointer, that's a really good point score for Monaco. So we have to start thinking about like what we want to do with our teams. Like, is it okay to take a -6 point drop if that asset is going to be the highest scoring driver out of the cheap assets? I don't know. I think another really good example of this is Alonso, right? Alonso looks all but guaranteed to decrease the maximum and go down to the bottom, to the floor, to 4.5 million after this race. But if he can replicate what he did in qualifying in Imola, starting P5, unless Aston Martin mess up the strategy again, which, maybe they will, in Monaco, it's way easier for him to hold that position until the end. And we saw him do that really well last year. I mean, no one got by Alonso. He opened up a gap for Stroll to essentially get a free pit by himself last year, and no one could pass him. So if Alonso performs well in qualifying and gets to Q3, gets some few points from quali points, and then stays there and actually scores his first few points of the season, he could get a decent point score, especially for the price of only 5 million. But again, he's going to drop to 4.5 million next race. So do you buy him now for the points, or do you just wait for the budget next time? And the third asset we have to discuss is obviously, Charles Leclerc and Ferrari. Ferrari not so much, because Ferrari, the constructors, this price change algorithm doesn't really work for the constructors, so Ferrari are all but guaranteed to increase in price anyway. But for Charles Leclerc, right? If the Ferrari are as good as they showed in FP1 and FP2, and they're actually up there fighting for pole position, who would you bet getting pole position between Hamilton and Leclerc? I would bet Leclerc. And Leclerc, in his home race, if he gets pole, wins the race, he's guaranteed driver of the day. I mean, that surely he gets driver of the day then, right? I mean, Yuki Tsunoda got driver of the day on P12 in Japan. If Leclerc wins in Monaco, he's going to get driver of the day. And in that case, I would want to have Leclerc. But again, Leclerc needs to score 71 points for a 0.3 increase, whereas Piastri needs to score -1. So again, if you make the transfer from Piastri to Leclerc, and then Leclerc gets a 45-pointer, which is a really, really good point score, especially on the 2x, he decreases 0.1 in price, and then Piastri gets third or whatever, increases 0.3, and then you've lost 0.4 million on the transfer from Piastri to Leclerc. So are you willing to take a 0.4 million price drop by switching out Piastri for Leclerc on the off chance that Leclerc is going to have a great weekend in his home race? And the answer is I don't know. I don't know mathematically what is best at which point in the season, but there is an argument to be made that the increased budget over the next couple of races is going to really, really matter, because once we get like past this sort of batch of races, we get past Canada and get into the European circuit proper, I do think we're going to be in a position where maybe, or at least some of us, will be able to afford 2 premium drivers if one of them is a Kimi Antonelli or Yuki Tsunoda we could already afford, but 2 premium constructors and 2 premium drivers in like a Piastri plus a Kimi Antonelli. And I think that's going to be the meta to strive towards once we get past this group of races. And if you fail to gain budget now, you're going to fall further behind, and it's going to take longer for you to get there. So the answer is I don't really know, right? And to sort of discuss this a bit further, I do have my good team here. If you've been following me on the deadline streams, again, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, so you don't miss the deadline streams. You really want to be here for the deadline streams. I made a second account with a new team after Australia. So this team started in China. And it's actually way ahead of my main team, the team that you usually see in my transfer plans video, that the team I'm focusing on for this series and this channel. I do have this team, and it's my best performing team, and this team really has a high budget. As you can see, I can afford both Albon and Stroll. And to sort of illustrate what you can do, like a lot of people are talking about Ferrari, and we're going to discuss Ferrari further, but with Ferrari in here, and with Ferrari in here, I can fit like Albon, Nico Hülkenberg, and Ferrari, which looks like a fantastic team, right? Ferrari looks really good for points. Definitely looks like to be the second fastest team. I mean, Mercedes look nowhere, so I definitely want to transfer them out. And then Alex Albon, I mean, Williams really look on it once again. Nico Hülkenberg, probably the best driver for price increases this week, and then obviously Colapinto and Bortoleto in there. Meanwhile, my main team that you've been following on the the team selection videos, I could not even afford Ferrari plus Albon plus any driver here, because I can't afford Nico Hülkenberg. I can't even reach Fernando Alonso. I would have 4.5 million in the bank like this, whereas this team has 6.6. So these few extra millions in the budget makes this team way more flexible. And when these big sort of shifts in which team is the fastest, or which driver, which constructor you want to have happens, such as a Ferrari right now, this team can afford to go for Ferrari. It has the flexibility, it has the budget to pick Ferrari plus a Hülkenberg or whatever. Whereas my other team doesn't have that flexibility, meaning that to even afford to get Ferrari into my other team, my main team, I would need to probably take a -10 or perhaps a -20, and then suddenly the upside of the Ferrari isn't really there anymore. So a lot to think about. I do think budget is important, but when do we stop caring about the budget? That's the question. Because again, if I could pick based on points, on points alone for this weekend, I would pick something like Albon. I would want to have Behrman in there. I would want to have Leclerc. I would want to have Ferrari. I would want to have Fernando Alonso. Now, can I afford all that? Not really, but you get what I'm trying to say, right? I know a few of you out there who have a really, really high budget could actually get quite close to affording something like this. Fernando Alonso would be 5 million. So if you're 1.7 million richer than what this team is right now, I mean, this team plus a Fernando Alonso, that's probably what I would pick to gain points this week, right? But obviously, this would be terrible for budget because Fernando Alonso, Behrman, Leclerc are all very, very likely to decrease in price. I do, however, have one final thing to discuss before we end this video and I send you on your merry way. And that's this little magical chip right here, the Final Fix. The Final Fix is a very, very special chip because it's a chip you can't really plan for. The opportunity to use Final Fix will just suddenly arise and you really need to be actively sort of thinking about it or have it at the back of your mind and prepare for it most weekends. And I see a real opportunity to use Final Fix this weekend, and let me show you how. For this team, again, we're doing the premium team, is probably what I should call it, the team that's in the top 10k. So I only have 2 free transfers right here. Now, if I want to get Leclerc in here, say Leclerc looks really good in FP3 again, and I want to get Leclerc as my 2x, but I also want to get Ferrari, right? To afford the Ferrari switch, I can't just do this, right? 24 million, there's no way I can afford just Ferrari and Leclerc. So I would have to make one more transfer, and that would be to sell Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll doesn't look great this weekend. Lance Stroll also has a 1-place grid penalty. I thought I should mention that, but I don't think that's going to be super important for him as an asset this week. The option is, of course, to take a -10. Will I take a -10? I don't think so. But what I can do and what you can do is, say you still have Oscar Piastri in here, and then for this team then, who only has two transfers, I would get Ferrari and Nico Hülkenberg in there. That leaves me 0.4 million in the bank. I can then watch qualifying, and say Leclerc gets pole. Pole position is worth 10 points. If I had done the -10, the risky move of going for Charles Leclerc, and he got pole, that basically would have been ±0, right? Because -10 for the extra transfer, +10 for him getting pole position. So what I can do, and what I think you can do as well, because I know a lot of us can't just afford to get Ferrari in here. We have to downgrade one of our assets, whether that's Lance Stroll, or whether you need to sell Alex Albon. You know, I'm lucky enough to be super rich on this team that I can afford Alex Albon. But let's just say this is already, Nico Hülkenberg, and you have to downgrade Alex Albon to like a Pierre Gasly. I think that's also fine to be able to afford Ferrari if you're less rich than what this team is. In that instance, because Leclerc has decreased in price a couple of times, recently, Piastri's 0.3 million more expensive than Leclerc, meaning that you can then watch the quali, and if Leclerc gets pole, you can final fix Oscar Piastri out for Charles Leclerc. This looks like a fantastic move for multiple reasons. One, you don't take the -10, and then, you take the... What if you take the -10 and then Charles Leclerc qualifies P8? You would cry, right? So you don't have to take the -10 and risk it on Charles Leclerc. You can just have Piastri's not Piastri's pole, Piastri's qualifying positions, Piastri's qualifying points in there. And then if Leclerc actually looks to be the fastest driver, and if he actually qualifies on pole, you get him on the 2x slot, meaning that you get him his points in the race ×2, which is obviously fantastic. If he's on pole and if he wins, he's very, very likely a driver of the day. I mean, probably the most certain I will be about a driver of the day all year. I mean, if you asked me to predict one driver of the day throughout the entire year, and it's like on my life, right? I would lose my life if I get it wrong. I would say if Charles Leclerc wins Monza, if Charles Leclerc wins Monaco, or maybe Monza as well, he would get the driver of the day. If Leclerc wins, he's getting driver of the day. Okay, that I'm just gonna call it right now, unless like Alex Albon gets P2 or something. I don't know. Leclerc is gonna get driver of the day if he wins, right? So the final fix is worth a lot of points then, because not only do you get the points of the winner, you get, you know, the almost the guaranteed driver of the day points, and also running in free air at the front makes you quite likely to pick up a fastest lap as well. In addition to all of that, so you know, I'm just making up ways Charles Leclerc can get points now. But in addition to that, because you final fixed, you don't get Leclerc's price drop, because even if Leclerc wins the race and gets fastest lap, he might not have enough points. Even if Leclerc wins the race and get fastest lap or driver of the day, that might not be enough points for him to increase in price, like even 0.1 million. So after a final fix, your team reverts back to what it was before you final fixed, meaning that you would still get the price rise of Oscar Piastri, and you probably want Piastri next week anyway if this looks like a one-time Ferrari is really good this weekend. So the final fix is definitely on this week. I think it should be definitely on for you as well. I don't think you should rush to get Leclerc for Piastri for a -10, because, again, that's a risky move that might not pay off, because Leclerc might qualify P8 and then you don't want him anymore. Use the final fix if Leclerc gets pole, because you don't even have to prepare for it. That's the great part. Normally we have to save 7 million in the bank to be able to upgrade Piastri to Lando if we want Lando on the final fix, for example, or Max Verstappen. But with Charles Leclerc, because he's now cheaper than Oscar Piastri, you can use this strategy with 0 in your cost cap, with absolutely 0 budget remaining, which I think is one of the reasons why this final fix is going to be very, very popular for a lot of people, if, again, Charles Leclerc ends up performing in qualifying tomorrow. So that's all I wanted to say in this video. Those were all my final thoughts, sort of just spewed out onto you. I hope this lack of editing is okay. I'm probably gonna leave a few mistakes in there. If you haven't liked the video, please make sure you do so. I haven't even had dinner yet. I just rushed home and sat my ass in front of the computer to record this, to get this out. Don't miss the deadline stream tomorrow. It's going to be a great time. I'll see you then. Goodbye. And don't forget to subscribe. Whatever. I'll see you in the next one.